The night was quiet enough to hear the neighbor's dog snoring through the thin walls when the sky ripped open like a zipper on reality. A glowing rift split the darkness above Jaden's yard, crackling with violet light, and out of it descended 3 armored figures that looked like someone had crossbred samurai with a kitchen appliance. They moved with military precision, eyes glowing red through helmet slits, and before anyone could scream, they stormed the porch, kicked the door open, and pointed weapons that hummed like angry beehives at Max, who had been halfway through a bowl of cold cereal. He froze, spoon in midair, blinking as if the universe had made a clerical error. The neighbors thought it was a prank for a YouTube channel. Max thought it was a nightmare. Jaden, who was in the garage trying to fix a coffee machine that had exploded earlier, thought he was being robbed until he stepped out and saw the rift, the armor, and the cereal spoon clattering to the floor. In the span of 15 seconds, the world made less sense than a squirrel driving a bus. The mercenaries moved fast, yanking Max to his feet while scanning him with a handheld device that chirped as if pleased with its discovery. Max yelped and tried to fight, which went about as well as a goldfish trying to wrestle a cat. Jaden's brain struggled to catch up. He knew trouble when he saw it. Years of dealing with loan sharks, corrupt cops, and thugs with too many tattoos had trained him well, but this was new territory. Alien mercenaries on his front lawn? That was a Tuesday he hadn't planned for. Wait! Jaden shouted, raising his hands as if reason might actually work here. You can't just take him. He's still under warranty. The lead mercenary glanced at him, then at Max, then back at Jaden. For a second, the glowing eyes narrowed, almost puzzled, before they shoved Max through the crackling portal. Jaden lunged forward, but the second mercenary swung a metal arm, knocking him to the ground like he weighed nothing. The neighbors cheered, thinking this was the best free entertainment they'd ever seen. Someone even live-streamed it. Jaden scrambled up, hard hammering, but it was too late. Max disappeared into the rift, the mercenaries followed, and the sky zipped shut as if nothing had happened. Silence fell over the street, broken only by the distant bark of the neighbor's dog, who apparently had slept through the apocalypse. Jaden stood there, chest heaving, mind blank, staring at the empty space where his brother had been. He wasn't the kind of man who panicked easily. People who knew him whispered the name the Stalker with the kind of respect reserved for hurricanes and tax collectors. He had spent years hunting down people who didn't want to be found, making enemies in places most people couldn't spell. But this was new. Aliens? Portals? Armored kidnappers? Even his messiest cases had never started with someone falling out of the sky. He went inside, sat at the table, and stared at the half-eaten cereal bowl as if it might explain things. It didn't. Then he noticed something under the chair where Max had been grabbed, a small metallic disc, glowing faintly blue, humming like a cat with bad intentions. Jaden picked it up carefully. It was smooth, warm, covered in strange symbols that seemed to crawl when he looked directly at them. His instincts told him this wasn't just a clue. It was an invitation. That was when the anger set in. Jaden wasn't sentimental by nature, but Max was all he had left. Their parents were gone, the rest of the family scattered, and while Max had a talent for making bad life choices, he was still Jaden's responsibility. And now something, had taken him. Jaden placed the disc on the table, staring at it while his brain started turning gears. He had contacts. People who owed him favors. A few who didn't hate his guts completely. Somewhere out there was someone who could explain what the hell had just happened. He made a call to an old friend named Lucas, who ran a pawn shop but really specialized in black market tech. Lucas answered on the second ring, sounding like he was halfway through a bottle of cheap whiskey. Jaden, Lucas slurred. You calling to sell me something or to shoot someone? Neither. Yet. Listen, you ever seen anything like this? Jaden described the disc. Silence on the other end stretched long enough to be suspicious. Yeah, Lucas said finally. You're in deep trouble, my friend. That's not from around here. You're talking off-world business. Bad people. Bad people just kidnapped my brother. Then you're dealing with mercs. Real professionals. And if they left a locator behind, it means they want someone to follow. Or someone else to find you after they're done. Jaden didn't like the sound of that. Where do I start? Same place everyone starts when they're desperate, Lucas said. I'll pass the edge of town. There's a guy who runs transport for certain clients. He can get you where you need to go. For a price. Name? Calls himself Vree. Big bug-looking guy. Don't stare at the mandibles. He hates that. Jaden hung up without saying goodbye. He grabbed his jacket, stuffed the disc into his pocket, and headed out. His mind was already working 3 steps ahead, running through possibilities. Whoever these mercenaries were, they had no idea who they had just tangled with. By the time he reached the edge of town, the anger had hardened into something cold. The kind of cold that made people tell stories about him in dark bars late at night. The kind of cold that earned him the name the Stalker. He would find these mercenaries. He would find whoever had sent them. And then the universe would learn a very simple lesson. You don't take what belongs to the Stalker and live to brag about it. Reed turned out to be everything Lucas had promised, and several things Jaden wished he hadn't. For one, he was 7 feet tall with an exoskeleton that looked like someone had welded together scraps from a car crash. His mandibles clicked when he talked, producing a sound somewhere between a typewriter and a lawnmower. The transport hub he ran was technically a junkyard on the edge of town, though the kind of junk it stored looked suspiciously like crashed UFOs and stolen military drones. Re-eyed Jaden with the suspicion of a man who had been cheated out of too many poker games. You want off-world? Bree said, clicking and buzzing through a voice modulator that made him sound like 3 people talking at once. Off-world costs extra. And if mercenaries are involved, you didn't hear my name. My name is irrelevant. Your name is very relevant if I have to hunt you down later, Jaden replied. He was in no mood for theatrics, but he suspected everything about Vria's existence was theatrical. The bugman stared at him for a long moment before laughing, a sound like gravel in a blender. Humans, he said. Always so dramatic. Fine. I take you? One way. You find your trouble. Then you pay me or you die. Either way, my reputation stays shiny. Jaden paid in advance using a handful of favors and a very old poker debt someone in Vria's circle apparently owed him. The ship he was led to looked like a refrigerator had sprouted wings as an afterthought. Inside, it smelled like oil, ozone, and something faintly resembling wet dog. Vri sat in the pilot's chair, limbs moving in all directions at once as he prepped the engines. The moment they took off, the sky bent. Jaden had flown before in military aircraft, even once in a stolen prototype jet, but this was something else entirely. The stars didn't blur so much as fold inward, reality hiccuping around the ship as Vri pushed them through something he called a slipstream. Jaden gripped the armrests, determined not to look impressed. So what's the plan? Vri asked after a while, his mandibles working as he spoke. You find mercenaries. You shoot mercenaries. Then what? Whole galaxy out there. They got friends. Big friends. Syndicate-size friends. Jaden had heard the name before. Syndicate of 9. Whispers in the criminal underworld painted them as the kind of organization that made empires nervous. If the mercenaries worked for them, things were worse than he thought. Then I keep shooting until they stop breathing, Jaden said flatly. Vri let out another of his gravel laughs. I like you, Stalker. You bring chaos with you. Galaxy been too quiet lately. They docked at a space station orbiting what looked like a dying red star. The station itself was a mess of welded platforms, flickering lights, and ships in various stages of disrepair. Vri explained this was where mercenaries came for contracts, drinks, and occasionally to sell each other out. The first bar they entered was named the Bent Nebula, though Jaden suspected it had never been near a nebula in its life. Inside, the air smelled like burning metal and despair. A dozen species sat at mismatched tables, some with too many eyes, some with too few limbs. A band in the corner played something that sounded like 2 car accidents happening in rhythm. Jaden ordered a drink that glowed faintly green. He didn't ask what it was. Reintroduced him to a bartender with skin like cracked porcelain who claimed to know things about mercenaries if you paid enough. Jaden paid enough. The bartender nodded toward a table in the back where 3 armored figures sat, helmets off, laughing in the guttural language of people who broke things for a living. Jaden recognized the armor immediately. It was the same style as the ones who had taken Max. He walked over, calm, hands visible, every step calculated. The mercenaries eyed him with mild curiosity, like wolves watching a deer walk into their den carrying barbecue sauce. "You were on Earth," Jaden said without preamble. "You took someone. I want him back." The leader, a scarred brute with metal implants along his jaw, grinned slowly. "We take lots of people, little human. Maybe he was tasty. Hard to keep track." His friends laughed, a sound like grinding gears. Jaden leaned on the table, voice low and even. "Ask around. Find out why they call me the Stalker. Then decide how funny this is." That wiped the smirks off their faces faster than a vacuum breach. The name traveled faster than light in some circles. A bounty hunter in the corner suddenly got up and left as if wanting no part of whatever was about to happen. The leader's grin faltered. "Not our choice," he said after a moment. "Contract came from Syndicate. High level. They want the human alive. Something in his blood. Some key." Jaden felt a chill creep up his spine. Max, with his talent for eating cereal at inappropriate times, was suddenly important to a galaxy full of criminals. "Where is he?" Jaden asked. The mercenary hesitated, then gave him coordinates to a place called Drosk Prime, a planet whose name sounded like a throat infection. Before Jaden could leave, the leader leaned closer. "You didn't hear this from us. Syndicate doesn't like loose ends." "Neither do I," Jaden said, and walked out. Back on the ship, Vree punched in the new coordinates while humming something that might have been music or a death threat. "You stir things up nicely," Vree said. "Mercenaries scared. Syndicate will notice soon." "Good," Jaden replied. His mind was already turning over the words something in his blood. Max didn't have enemies. Max barely had friends. Whatever this was, it went deeper than a simple kidnapping. As the ship prepared to jump, Jaden stared out at the stars, each one a cold reminder of how big the universe was and how small even someone like him could be. But he wasn't feeling small. He was feeling like a man with a purpose, and the universe was about to learn what kind of trouble that meant. Drosk Prime looked like the universe's idea of a bad joke. The entire planet was one enormous city stacked in layers, as if someone had kept building skyscrapers until they ran out of sky. The lowest levels were shrouded in permanent smog while the upper towers glittered under artificial suns. It was the kind of place where you could buy anything, lose everything, and disappear without anyone asking questions. The Syndicate of Nine ran it like a personal playground, and everyone knew the rules here were written in blood and recycled credits. As Vree brought the ship into one of the spaceport platforms, Jaden watched crowds of aliens, criminals, traitors, and people who looked like they'd sold their consciences years ago scuttling around below. It reminded him of the worst parts of Earth, but with more tentacles. The moment he stepped off the ship, eyes followed him. Whispers traveled faster than weapons in places like this. The Stalker was here. The name carried weight, and not the friendly kind. Some faces turned away, others watched him with interest, but everyone seemed to know something was about to happen. That was fine by him. Jaden had never liked surprises unless he was the one giving them. Vree led him through a maze of streets, past neon signs flickering in languages Jaden couldn't read and food stalls serving things he didn't want to identify. He asked about the Syndicate headquarters, but Vree only laughed and pointed to a tower so tall it disappeared into the smog above. The building looked like a dagger stabbing the sky, black metal and red lights pulsing along its sides. "They run everything from there," Vree said. "Casinos, smuggling rings, contract killings. You walk in uninvited, you come out in pieces. If you come out at all." Jaden stared at it for a long moment. "Then we invite ourselves properly." But before storming the Syndicate's nest, he needed information. They ended up in a casino on one of the mid-levels, a place called the Starfall, where gamblers shouted over the clang of machines and alien dealers with too many arms shuffled cards faster than the eye could follow. Jaden sat at a table, ordered a drink, and started playing a game he didn't know the rules to but learned quickly enough by watching the others. The goal wasn't winning money. The goal was to attract attention, and nothing got attention faster in a criminal casino than a newcomer taking everyone's credits. Within half an hour, he had a stack of winnings in front of him, and several angry players glaring his way. Perfect. Eventually, a thin man in a suit made of something that looked like black glass slid into the seat across from him. The man's smile was polished but didn't reach his eyes. "You're making quite an impression," the man said. His accent hinted at expensive education and bad intentions. "People say you're looking for someone." "My brother," Jaden said. "Taken by syndicate mercs. I hear they brought him here." The man chuckled softly, as if humoring a child. "Many people are brought here. Few leave without adjustments." Jaden leaned forward, voice low. "Do I look like someone you want to laugh at?" Something in his tone made the man's smile falter. He gestured casually toward the upper floors. "You want information, you talk to the brokers. They know every deal made on this planet. But it will cost you more than credits." Jaden tossed the entire stack of winnings onto the table. "Start the tab." The man hesitated, then nodded slowly. "Third floor. Ask for Lyris. But be careful, Stalker. The syndicate doesn't like your kind sniffing around." As Jaden stood to leave, 2 security enforcers stepped in front of him, big enough to have their own gravity fields. For a moment, it looked like things might get ugly, but the man in the glassy suit waved them off. "Let him go. For now." The third floor was quieter, carpeted, with guards who looked bored enough to kill someone just for conversation. Lyris turned out to be a woman with silver eyes and hair that floated as if underwater. She smiled when Jaden walked in, though it felt more like a threat than a welcome. "You want your brother," she said before he even spoke. "Yes, I know who you are. The syndicate knows too. They are not pleased. Where is he?" She tapped long fingers on the desk. "Alive for now. They say he carries something valuable. A key, though no one seems to know to what. That makes him worth keeping until they find answers." Jaden's jaw tightened. "Then I'll take him before they get them." Lyris laughed softly. "Many have tried taking things from the syndicate. Few succeed. Fewer breathe afterward." He leaned closer, eyes hard. "I'm not many people." For a moment, they stared at each other, the air heavy with unspoken threats. Then she slid a small data chip across the table. "These are the coordinates for the holding facility. But be warned, Stalker. They will expect you. They always do." He took the chip without a word and left. Back on the crowded streets, Vree clicked his mandibles nervously. "This smells wrong," he said. "Too easy. Syndicate doesn't hand out gifts." Jaden agreed. Something about Lyris bothered him. People who smiled that much were usually hiding knives. But he didn't have time to wonder why she helped him. Max was alive, and that was all that mattered. They reached the edge of the district where the holding facility loomed like a fortress welded onto the side of a tower. Guards patrolled catwalks lit by harsh white lights, and drones buzzed overhead scanning for trouble. Jaden studied the layout from a shadowed alley, memorizing guard patterns, security cameras, and possible exits. "This is suicide," Vree muttered. "This is Tuesday," Jaden replied. They slipped inside during a shift change, moving through maintenance corridors that smelled like rust and ozone. Jaden's heart pounded steadily, not from fear but anticipation. He had done infiltrations before, but never one involving aliens, plasma rifles, and a criminal syndicate spanning half the galaxy. Near the central chamber, voices echoed down the hallway. Syndicate officers discussed something about genetic markers and activation codes. Jaden froze, listening. They mentioned Max by name, along with words like artifact and awakening. Before he could process it, alarms blared. Red lights flashed. Somehow they had been spotted. Vree cursed in 3 languages as armored guards poured into the hallway. Jaden shot the first one with a stolen rifle, the blast echoing off metal walls. Chaos erupted instantly, bolts of energy searing the air as they dove for cover. In the middle of it all, one thought cut through Jaden's mind like a blade. They hadn't just taken Max for ransom. They had taken him for something much bigger, something even the Syndicate feared. The alarms howled through the facility like furious banshees while red lights painted everything in frantic color. Jaden moved with the kind of precision that came from years of surviving ambushes, ducking behind a support beam as plasma fire chewed through the air where his head had been a second earlier. Ree scrambled beside him, firing a weapon that looked like it had been assembled from spare parts and bad intentions. Guards shouted orders in 3 different languages, boots pounding on metal floors as they tried to corner the intruders. Jaden could feel the entire facility locking down, security doors sealing, drones humming awake like angry hornets. They had minutes at best before this whole place turned into a tomb. Through the chaos, Jaden spotted a reinforced door ahead, flanked by 2 guards who looked like they ate nails for breakfast. He counted down silently and sprinted forward, using the covering fire from Vree to close the distance. The first guard swung his weapon toward him, but Jaden drove an elbow into his throat and used the man's own body as a shield against the second guard's shot. A quick twist, a stolen rifle, and both were down before they even hit the floor. Jaden keyed the door panel, overriding it with the data chip Lyris had given him. He half expected it to trigger a trap, but the door slid open with a hiss. Inside was a holding cell bathed in cold blue light. Max sat strapped to a chair in the center, wires snaking from his arms into machines that hummed ominously. He looked pale, angry, and very much alive. "About time," Max muttered as Jaden cut him free. "I was starting to think you'd given up and rented out my room." Jaden almost smiled despite the chaos outside. "You cost too much in groceries to leave behind." Before they could leave, one of the monitors flickered to life, and a Syndicate officer appeared on the screen. The man wore dark armor marked with red symbols, his face hidden behind a mask that glowed faintly. "You have no idea what you've taken," the voice said, metallic and cold. "That human carries the key to something older than your species. Do you think the Syndicate fears you? We fear what he will awaken." Jaden didn't waste words. He shot the monitor, sparks flying, and dragged Max toward the door. They fought their way back through the corridors, recovering their retreat while muttering about unpaid fares and suicidal humans. Max stumbled beside Jaden, still woozy from whatever the Syndicate had pumped into him, but he kept moving. More guards fell, more alarms screamed, and by the time they reached the maintenance hatch leading back to the streets, the facility behind them was burning. They didn't stop running until they reached the shadow of a half-collapsed building 2 districts away. Only then did Jaden round on Max, eyes hard. "What did they mean, something older than our species? What did they put you through?" Max leaned against the wall, breathing hard. "I don't know everything. They kept talking about genetic markers, activation sequences. They said my blood matches some ancient registry. Like I'm part of a code written 1,000,000 years ago. They think I can open something. Something dangerous." Vree clicked his mandibles nervously. "He is telling truth. I have heard rumors. Old weapons. Older than Syndicate, older than empires. Things left behind by builders. Nobody knows what they were. Some say gods, some say monsters. All say dangerous." Jaden processed this in silence. Max, the guy who once set fire to their kitchen trying to make toast, was apparently carrying the galactic equivalent of a launch key in his veins. It would have been funny if people weren't trying to kill them over it. "We need answers," Jaden said finally. Vree hesitated before speaking. "There is someone. An archivist on Corin Station. Knows old things, forbidden things. But Syndicate will hunt you. They will not stop. They can get in line," Jaden said. They found temporary shelter in an abandoned transport hangar while Vree prepared the ship for another jump. Max sat on a crate, head in his hands. "I didn't ask for this," Max said quietly. "I just wanted a normal life." Jaden almost laughed. "You shared DNA with the galaxy's biggest mystery weapon and you expected normal? He shook his head. Listen, we'll figure this out. But right now, that thing in your blood has every mercenary in the quadrant lining up to shoot you or sell you. Max looked up, fear and guilt warring in his eyes. Maybe I should turn myself in. If they want me this bad, maybe it's better than watching you risk your life. Not happening, Jaden said flatly. You're my brother. That means we fight our way through this mess together. Besides, you'd last 5 minutes before someone chopped you up to see how the key works. Before Max could argue, Vree stomped back in. Ship ready? We go now. Syndicate already spreading word. Bounties on you will make half the galaxy come running. They boarded quickly, engines rumbling as Vree powered up. Through the viewport, Jaden saw movement in the alleys below. Too many shadows shifting, too many shapes watching. They've already found us, Jaden muttered. The first shots came as the ship lifted off, streaks of plasma cutting through the night. Vree cursed, throwing the vessel into a steep climb while return fire from Syndicate hunters lit up the sky. Jaden manned one of the side turrets, picking off attackers as they weaved through towers and neon signs. By the time they broke through the upper atmosphere and into orbit, the pursuit had grown to 3 ships. Sleek Syndicate interceptors, faster and better armed than anything Vree flew. This will get ugly, Vree said grimly, shoving the throttle forward. Jaden strapped Max into a seat and headed for the second turret. The interceptors closed fast, weapons flashing. The ship shuddered under the hits, alarms wailing, but Jaden's return fire scored a direct hit on one pursuer, sending it spinning into a nearby communications tower in a burst of flame. The remaining 2 kept coming. Vree threw the ship into maneuvers that made gravity feel optional, banking hard enough to rattle bones. Jaden lined up another shot and shredded the wing of the second interceptor, watching it spiral out of control. The last one broke off, either low on ammo or courage. Silence returned, broken only by the hiss of damaged systems and Max's uneven breathing. Vree didn't slow down until the stars stretched and twisted as they jumped into slipstream space. Only then did Jaden leave the turret and sit across from Max, who looked like the universe had just dropped on his shoulders. Whatever this key is, Jaden said, we find the truth before the Syndicate does. Then we decide who gets to keep breathing. Max nodded weakly, and for the first time since this began, Jaden saw something in his brother's eyes that wasn't fear. It was determination, the kind that meant the next move would change everything. Corrin Station floated in the darkness like a spiderweb made of metal and ambition. From a distance, it looked almost peaceful with its rings of light spinning slowly around a central hub. But up close, Jaden could see the kind of chaos that came from hundreds of species trying to survive in the same orbiting mess. Ships of every size crawled along docking arms while holographic billboards screamed about gambling dens, weapon auctions, and something advertised only as the experience, which Jaden decided he didn't want to know about. Vree guided the ship into one of the less reputable docks, muttering about fees and regulations while Max sat silently, still wrestling with the weight of what he carried in his blood. The archivist they sought lived in the oldest part of the station, a sector where the walls sweated rust and the air tasted like recycled dust. Jaden didn't trust the place from the moment they stepped off the ship. Too many eyes followed them. Too many whispers chased after the word Stalker. The Syndicate had already spread bounties across half the known systems, and every lowlife with a weapon was now wondering how much trouble it was worth to claim it. They found the archivist in a cluttered chamber stacked high with data cubes, half-broken consoles, and ancient relics that hummed faintly as if remembering better centuries. She was a thin, pale figure with eyes like polished stone and a voice that carried the weight of someone who had read too much and lived too little. "You brought the key," she said the moment Max stepped inside. It wasn't a question. Max shifted uncomfortably. "I didn't ask to be anyone's key. I didn't even know I was carrying anything." The archivist studied him the way a surgeon might study a bomb. "Your blood carries the access code to the Celestine Vault. It was locked before your species discovered fire. The builders left it behind when they vanished. Empires have risen and fallen trying to open it. No one has succeeded." Jaden crossed his arms. "What's inside?" The archivist hesitated, which did nothing good for Jaden's nerves. Some say a weapon. Others believe it is knowledge. The Syndicate believes it is power enough to crush any rival. That is why they want him alive. Only his genetic signature can unlock the vault. Max swore under his breath. So the entire galaxy is trying to kill me because some ancient maniacs left behind a mystery box? Essentially, the archivist said. Jaden rubbed his jaw, thinking. What happens if we open it first? The archivist gave him a long, unreadable look. Then you will know why it was locked. Before Jaden could reply, Vree clicked his mandibles sharply. We have company, he said, peering through a cracked window. Outside, Syndicate mercenaries were spreading through the sector, moving with the kind of confidence that came from being both feared and well paid. Civilians scattered as the soldiers advanced, weapons ready. Someone had tipped them off. Jaden cursed, grabbed Max, and shoved him toward the back door. Move! Now! The archivist didn't protest as they fled through narrow corridors smelling of oil and desperation. Behind them, Syndicate troops shouted orders while boots clanged against metal floors. Vree led the way through a maze of maintenance shafts, his knowledge of stations like this keeping them one step ahead of the hunters. They emerged onto a loading platform halfway up the station's spine, wind from the artificial atmosphere howling through broken panels. Across the platform, a group of bounty hunters cut them off, grinning like hyenas. One of them, a massive reptilian wearing half a suit of stolen armor, raised his weapon. The Stalker, he said with something like amusement. Big price on you. Bigger on the boy. Jaden sighed. You could walk away. The reptilian grinned wider. Or we could retire rich. The fight exploded before he finished talking. Jaden moved like a storm-given human shape, plasma fire flashing around him as he closed the distance to the nearest hunter. A punch, a stolen blade, a thrown body into the path of incoming fire, he dismantled them with terrifying efficiency. Vree gunned down two more from the side while Max dove behind a cargo crate, swearing loudly about wanting his normal life back. The last bounty hunter tried to run. Jaden shot him in the leg, grabbed him by the collar, and slammed him against the wall. Who tipped off the Syndicate? The hunter spat blood, eyes wide with fear. Everyone talks, Stalker. Price that big, even your shadow would sell you out. Jaden dropped him and turned toward the nearest comm terminal, smashing it with the butt of his rifle. He sent a single message across the station's underworld channels: the Syndicate dies tonight. Vree stared at him like he'd grown two heads. You just declared war on the biggest crime empire in the quadrant. They started it, Jaden said. What followed was chaos in its purest form. Word spread fast across Corin Station, faster than fire in a dry forest. Rivals of the Syndicate saw opportunity in the distraction. Mercenaries switched sides mid-fight when they realized the Stalker was paying bounties for Syndicate heads out of his stolen casino winnings. By the time the Syndicate reinforcements arrived, half the station was a war zone lit by plasma fire, burning stalls, and the occasional explosion when someone hit a fuel line. Jaden moved through it like a man possessed, Max close behind, recursing every life choice that had led him here. The Syndicate troops fought hard, but they hadn't counted on the station's own gangs turning on them for a slice of the chaos. What began as a pursuit turned into a full-scale battle for control of the sector. Somewhere in the middle of it, Jaden cornered a Syndicate officer and pressed a blade to his throat. Where's your boss? The officer sneered. You think killing him will stop this? The vault will open. Your brother will open it for us or for someone else. It's only a matter of time. Jaden knocked him out cold and kept moving. By the time they reached the upper docking levels, fires burned across 3 sectors, Syndicate banners lay trampled in the streets, and the station authorities had locked themselves in their offices hoping the problem would kill itself off. Vree got the ship running while Jaden and Max covered the landing platform. More Syndicate troops arrived, but their lines collapsed when bounty hunters turned rebels hit them from behind. Jaden didn't know if it was loyalty, greed, or sheer stupidity driving the chaos, but he used it to buy time. When the ship finally lifted off, Smoke and fire reflected across its hull while the station shrank behind them. Max slumped into a chair, trembling from adrenaline and exhaustion. "This doesn't end," he said quietly. "Even if we run, they'll keep coming." Jaden watched the burning station through the viewport, jaw tight. "Then we don't run. We find the vault first. And when we do, the Syndicate learns what happens when they come after my family." Max looked at him, something fierce sparking behind the fear. For the first time since this started, he almost believed they might survive this nightmare. The vault waited on a dead world orbiting a star that looked ready to burn itself out. From orbit, the planet was nothing but gray deserts and jagged mountains under a sky the color of ash. No cities, no signs of life, just a single structure rising from the wasteland like a black tooth pushed up from the planet's bones. It was enormous, angular, older than anything built by human hands, and it radiated the kind of silence that made people whisper even when no one was around to hear them. We refused to land any closer than a mile, muttering about ancient curses and bad omens, so they hiked the last stretch on foot, Max pale but determined, Jaden scanning the horizon for Syndicate ships. None had shown up yet, but he knew that wouldn't last. The vault's entrance was a towering archway carved with symbols that hurt to look at for too long. Max approached slowly, his steps echoing against the stone. As he drew closer, faint lines of light began to spread across the surface like veins waking up after a long sleep. The doors shifted with a sound like grinding mountains, and dust rained down as it opened for the first time in eons. Inside was a corridor that seemed to stretch forever, lit by pulses of blue energy running through walls made of some metal that wasn't quite metal. Their footsteps sounded too loud, too small, as they moved deeper until the corridor widened into a chamber so vast the ceiling vanished into darkness. At its center stood a sphere the size of a house, suspended above the floor by nothing Jaden could see. It turned slowly, its surface shifting between metal, light, and something that looked disturbingly like water. "This is it," Max whispered. Jaden didn't like the way the sphere seemed to watch them without eyes. "What exactly does it do?" The archivist's words echoed in his memory. "Some say a weapon. Others believe it is knowledge. The Syndicate believes it is power." No one had said what kind of power. Jaden didn't like surprises that glowed ominously in the dark. Before Max could move closer, the air behind them rippled, and Syndicate soldiers poured through the doorway like a flood of armored insects. At their head walked a man in black armor trimmed with red, his face hidden behind a visor that burned like hot coals. His voice carried across the chamber, calm and cold. "Step away from the vault," he said. "The boy comes with us. You can die here or leave rich beyond your dreams. Choose wisely." Jaden raised his weapon. "You talk too much." The Syndicate leader tilted his head. "You think you can stop this? He was born for this purpose. The Builders wrote it into his blood. He opens the vault, or the galaxy burns when someone less careful eventually does." Max stepped forward, voice shaking but loud enough to carry. "If I open it, what happens?" The leader's silence was answer enough. Jaden's instincts screamed this was about to go bad in ways none of them could predict. The Syndicate soldiers began to spread out, weapons ready, while the sphere in the center of the room pulsed brighter, as if sensing its key had arrived. "Max," Jaden said carefully, "don't touch anything until we figure out what it is." Max gave a shaky laugh. "Pretty sure it wants me to. Kind of feels like it's calling me." Before anyone could stop him, Max pressed his palm to the surface of the sphere. The world changed. Light exploded outward in a wave that knocked Syndicate soldiers off their feet and sent weapons skittering across the floor. Symbols blazed to life across the walls, the floor, even the ceiling high above. A sound filled the chamber, not quite a voice but something vast and ancient, like the memory of a language older than stars. Images flashed in the air, galaxies forming, civilizations rising and falling, wars fought with weapons that cracked planets like eggs. The Syndicate leader staggered back, visor flickering with static as the soldiers scrambled in confusion. Then the voice came, deep enough to rattle bones and echo inside skulls. "Custodianship recognized. Authorization restored." Peacekeeper system online. The sphere split apart like a blooming flower, revealing a core of blinding light surrounded by constructs that looked both mechanical and alive. Data poured into the air in glowing streams, diagrams of fleets and weapons, but also cities, libraries, archives of knowledge stretching beyond comprehension. Jaden realized at once this wasn't a weapon meant to destroy. It was something meant to stop destruction. A failsafe left behind by the builders to keep younger civilizations from tearing the galaxy apart the way they clearly once had. The Syndicate leader shouted for his troops to seize the core, but the constructs moved first. Tendrils of light lashed out, disabling weapons, sealing doors, driving soldiers back with precision that left no room for resistance. One by one, the Syndicate troops fell or fled, their leader cursing as he was forced to retreat through the collapsing doorway. Max collapsed to his knees, the glow from the core fading as the system settled into some kind of standby mode. Jaden ran to him, half expecting to see him burned or broken, but Max looked more exhausted than hurt. "It talked to me," Max whispered. "Said it's been waiting for someone with the right code to wake it up. It's not a weapon. It's everything. Knowledge, technology, history. It can stop wars before they start. Control fleets so no one faction can destroy everything." Jaden helped him stand as the constructs withdrew back into the sphere, the petals folding closed again. The light dimmed until only faint lines remained, like the vault had gone back to sleep now that its purpose was fulfilled. "Will the Syndicate be back?" Max asked quietly. Jaden glanced toward the sealed doors. "Probably. But now they know they can't control it. That thing doesn't take orders from them. Or from us." Ree approached warily, mandibles twitching. "Whole galaxy will hear about this. Wars will start over it. Secrets like this do not stay secret. Then we make sure they know the Stalker will be watching," Jaden said. They left the vault as the first Syndicate ships began fleeing the planet, their troops leaderless after the constructs disabled their weapons from orbit. By the time Jaden, Max, and Ree reached their own ship, the sky above was filled with retreating engines. As the dead world shrank behind them, Max leaned back in his seat, looking like someone who had carried too much for too long. "What now?" he asked. Jaden watched the stars ahead, his voice steady. "Now we make sure no one ever tries this again. The Syndicate, the warlords, anyone who thinks they can control what they don't understand. They'll all learn the same lesson." Max glanced at him. "And what's that?" Jaden allowed himself the faintest hint of a smile. "You don't mess with my family. Or with the Stalker." Ree muttered about humans and their taste for trouble, but he didn't sound surprised. The ship jumped into slipstream, leaving the Syndicate, the vault, and the wreckage of an empire's ambition behind them. For the first time in weeks, Jaden felt like they might actually make it home. The galaxy was still dangerous, still full of enemies, but it had also just learned a very simple truth. Some things were better left locked. And some people were better left alone.